Heading into week 5 of the college football season, there are not a ton of rivalry games going down this week. With that being said, one of the games I want to talk about is a rivalry that has flown under the radar, has become one of the more important SEC games each year for both schools. That rivalry is Ole Miss versus LSU, aka the Magnolia Bowl. This is the story of the Magnolia Bowl and why it is one of the more underrated rivalries in all of college football. But before we get into this, if you enjoy college football content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Also, let me know what you think is an underrated college football rivalry I should talk about in the comment section below. I want to apologize, I'm losing my voice right now. We're going to still power through. The Magnolia Bowl dates all the way back to 1894 when Ole Miss traveled to Baton Rouge to take on LSU and beat them 26-6. The following year, LSU would travel to Mississippi and beat the Rebels 12-4, earn their first victory in the series. LSU would dominate the rivalry until 1937, winning 20 of the first 27 matchups, as Ole Miss would only win 7 games during that same time. Their longest winning streak would be 2 games in 1912 and 1914. LSU would have a 9-game win streak, a 6-game win streak, and multiple 2-game win streaks in the series during that period. Ole Miss would proceed to win 4 straight from 1938 to 1941, where the series would go on hiatus due to World War II, following the 1942 game, which LSU won 21-7. The rivalry would return in 1945, and since then has been played every year. From 1940 until 1969, Ole Miss would dominate the rivalry, winning 15 of the 26 games, while LSU only won 8 games, while there would be 3 ties. One of the games LSU would win would be in 1959, when the number 1 ranked Tigers took on the 3rd ranked Rebels. Ole Miss was up 3-0, until Billy Cannon returned a punt 89 yards for a touchdown, breaking 7 tackles. Ole Miss would proceed to drive down the field, but the Tigers' defense would stop the Rebels on the 1-yard line to win 7-3. The two would play again in the Sugar Bowl that year, which saw Ole Miss win 21-0 and be named national champions by multiple polls. 1960 would not disappoint either, as they would play it to a tie, which would be the only blemish on Ole Miss's 1960 national title team, going 9-0-1. In 1972, the game known as the night the clock stopped, number 6 LSU would survive against an unranked Ole Miss team, as LSU would score a game-winning touchdown as time expired. Ole Miss claims there were some issues with the clock, and the state of Louisiana would take advantage of it by putting a sign on the state line reading, "You are now entering Louisiana. Set your clock back 4 seconds." LSU would dominate the series throughout the 1970s, winning 9 of the 11 matchups from 1970 to 1980, and once again dominated throughout the 80s as well. Throughout the 60s, 70s, and most of the 80s, the Ole Miss home games during the series would take place in Jackson rather than Oxford. The hosting duties for the rivalry were not always consistent, as LSU hosted the rivalry 14 times in a row from 1936 to 1951, and was hosting the game more than Ole Miss, with it being played in New Orleans or Baton Rouge. But the reason Ole Miss hosted in Jackson was because the larger Mississippi Veteran Memorial Stadium in Jackson provided a more neutral and accessible venue with a much greater seating capacity. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement for both Ole Miss and the state. It was a more central location in the state, giving Ole Miss fans from around the state more access. The extra seating was also important because this game drew more fans than other matchups as well. The 1989 game marked the first time LSU traveled to Oxford since 1960. The week before, against Vanderbilt, Rebels safety Chucky Mullins would suffer a career-ending and ultimately fatal injury when attempting to tackle. The Ole Miss student body passed buckets around the stadium to a then record crowd of 42,700 at Vaught Hemingway Stadium. They raised over $150,000 for the Mullins Fund. Ole Miss would lose to a 1-6 LSU team 35-30, as their 21-point comeback fell short. Ole Miss would win 3 straight to close out the 90s, including a 36-21 victory in 1997, when LSU entered the game as the 7th-ranked team in the nation. The 2003 game would see the winner represent the SEC West in the SEC title game, and LSU would win 17-14. This blocked Ole Miss from making its first appearance in the SEC title game, although both finished as co-champions. LSU would win the SEC title game and made it to the BCS championship game. This would be the second win for LSU in a 6-game winning streak that Ole Miss would snap in 2008 and won again in 2009. The 2009 game would have a hectic ending. It would be Ole Miss's first win in Baton Rouge since 1998. In 2013, LSU would enter the game ranked 6th in the country, but Ole Miss would go up 17-0. Zach Mettenberger would make up for his 3 interceptions in the game by leading the Tigers back to a comeback, but Bo Wallace would lead Ole Miss down the field to kick a game-winning field goal with 2 seconds left, pull off the upset 27-24. In 2014, LSU would upset number 3 Ole Miss, led by a young defense as well as running backs Leonard Fournette and Kenny Hilliard. LSU would win the game 10-7 and basically ended the Rebels' bid to play in the college football playoffs. In 2021, while retiring Eli Manning's jersey, Ole Miss would snap a 5-game losing streak to LSU, led by quarterback Matt Corral. 2023 saw both teams enter the game ranked for the first time since 2016. In a thrilling game, Ole Miss would win 55-49. Last year, number 13 LSU upset number 9 Ole Miss 29-26 in overtime after never leading in the game. It was the first overtime game in series history and added to the special history of this game. Into this year's matchup, both teams will be ranked in the top 15 in the nation, as LSU ranks 3rd, and Ole Miss was the number 13 team last week, was expected to rise, with this video being recorded before the release of the AP poll. They are both 4-0. LSU currently leads the series with a record of 64-42-4. So why is this game known as the Magnolia Bowl? Well, the game is named after the state flower of both Louisiana and Mississippi, the magnolia. The game would not actually get the nickname until 2008, never really having a title beforehand. Elizabeth Yerger, who was the Director of Student Services for Ole Miss's Associate Student Body, said back in 2008, "After narrowing down the hundreds of names we received, we asked students at both Ole Miss and LSU to vote on their favorite title from a list of 5 choices. The title Magnolia Bowl was the obvious winner at both of the schools, because the magnolia serves as a state flower for both Mississippi and Louisiana. When the rivalry was given the name, it also would be given a trophy as well, the Magnolia Bowl Trophy. The trophy has a magnolia flower with the backdrop having the LSU and Ole Miss logo with the bowl name on it as well. The Magnolia Bowl Trophy was designed by LSU senior sculptor Major Evan Trapp in 2008, with input from both the LSU and Ole Miss student bodies. The trophy featured a magnolia flower atop a basswood base, was crafted as part of the new yearly contest between the two schools. The name and the trophy were meant to enhance the spirit of the rivalry. Ole Miss wrote back in 2008, after first garnering the support of the university's athletic departments and alumni associations, student leaders set forth in April with the Name That Rivalry campaign for students to provide input on the name via text messaging. The student government then voted in their respective student senates. Ole Miss's ASB played a major role in the development and finalization of the logo, which was designed by an Ole Miss student from Cultographic, and the logo contained the Ole Miss, LSU, and SEC logo as well as the magnolia flower. Yerger went on to say, "Our purpose is to enhance the school spirit surrounding the rivalry. Both schools believe the Magnolia Bowl will bring out the livelihood, excitement, and traditions for not only the teams and the fans, but from the media outlets and football lovers around the country as well." This rivalry is not the biggest rivalry for either school if you probably asked a fan. For LSU, they may say Auburn and Alabama are bigger rivals to them, while Ole Miss would say Mississippi State, yet it is both schools' second most played game in program history, which says something about the connection between the two. For the game, it is tradition for both schools to yell at each other, "Go to hell." It is a legendary story that dates back to 1959. One says that prior to the 1959 matchup between the two teams, LSU coach Paul Dyson hired a plane to litter the campus with flyers saying "Go to hell LSU" to motivate his team. Not to be outdone, Ole Miss's Johnny Vaught did the same thing to motivate the Rebels with the flyers saying "Go to hell Ole Miss." Another version of the story claims that Ditzel and Vaught littered each other's campuses with their respective flyers instead of their own. The game may also be starting to become more and more important for both teams when it comes to the college football playoffs. This will be the 3rd straight year that both teams will be entering the game ranked. With the expanded college football playoffs, it is a crucial resume builder for both teams. Last year, many outlets claimed the matchup was a huge game for the college football playoffs. CBS Sports wrote before the game, with the 12-team college football playoffs serving as a backdrop, and the elimination of divisions opening up a path to the SEC championship game for either team, the Magnolia Bowl stakes have rarely been higher. The current playoff format is forgiving, so a loss isn't a death sentence. That doesn't detract from the must-win feeling of such a contest. Heading into this year's game, Ole Miss will host LSU as a 1.5-point favorite. The game kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC, If you want to attend the game, it'll cost you a pretty penny, as the lowest ticket cost online is $250. What do you think? Which rivalry should I cover next? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my other videos YouTube thinks you will love right here. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to embrace the grind.